I never considered myself particularly adventurous, nor did I think my life was extraordinary in any way. I graduated from a decent college, worked a regular job, and did my best to pay off my bills. But sometimes, life takes a strange turn when you least expect it. One day, an advertisement for a paid sleep study popped up on my social media feed. It wasn't flashy, but its bold letters caught my eye. Earn extra income. Participate in a revolutionary sleep study by the Green Lane Institute. I was intrigued. The ad's text was short and direct. Are you tired? Having trouble sleeping? Earn up to $500 a day in a state-of-the-art facility? Normally, I'd ignore such things, suspecting them to be fake or, at best, poorly organized. But the name Green Lane Institute sounded official. The post included a generic photo of a research lab with people wearing white coats. I decided to click and fill out the application. What could it hurt? Within hours, I received an email inviting me for an evaluation. To my surprise, it provided no phone number or physical address, just a request to fill out a health questionnaire and choose a convenient time slot for a screening call. The digital form asked about everything: my medical history, any known family issues, how many hours I typically slept, and how often I dreamed. I shrugged it off and answered honestly, figuring the more thorough the data, the more professional the study. I ended up selecting a video call time for the following week. When the day arrived, I hesitated. Should I just ignore this? But the compensation was impressive, and I thought it might help me fix my routine. So I sat in front of my computer, waiting for the call. Exactly at 2 p.m., a video link appeared in my inbox. I clicked, and a man with a calm, somewhat distant expression greeted me. "Hello," he said. "Thank you for your interest in the Green Lane Institute's sleep study. My name is Dr. Ellis." He wore a neat, ironed shirt, but there was something about his gaze. It felt clinical, not at all warm. He asked me to confirm basic personal information, and then read a series of instructions in a measured tone. Finally, he set down his clipboard. "You're an ideal candidate for our research," he said. "If you're still interested, we would like you to come to our facility. Please note that this is an intensive study. We will require a commitment of no less than 21 days. That was longer than I had anticipated, and I hesitated. 3 weeks was a big chunk of time to vanish from everyday life, especially if I had to stay somewhere remote. But the pay was incredible. He quoted a figure that made my eyes widen. I decided on the spot that I could make it work. I would just explain to my boss that I needed personal leave. When you're offered an amount like that, it's hard to say no. 3 days later, I got a plain envelope in the mail. Inside was a single note typed in block letters, telling me to arrive at a parking lot near a local airport. A black van would pick me up at 6 a.m. the following Monday. "Do not bring any unapproved personal electronics," it read. "You may bring clothing, basic toiletries, and reading materials that do not require internet access." That was it. No official letterhead, no signature, no facility name. I felt a gnawing sense of unease, but again, I thought the money was worth some inconvenience. Bright and early Monday morning, I found myself in an empty parking lot under cloudy skies, second-guessing everything. At exactly 6 a.m., a dark van with tinted windows pulled up. The passenger door slid open. A woman wearing a blue coat gave me a polite nod, then motioned for me to get in. Inside, the seats were bolted down in pairs, and a tinted partition separated the driver from the rest of the van. Across from me sat a man in a white lab coat, flipping through papers. He only asked my name before writing something on a clipboard. We drove for hours. At first, I tried to look out the windows, but everything was so heavily tinted that I could barely see the outline of passing trees and buildings. Eventually, I stopped trying to track where we were. The entire ride was enveloped in silence, broken only by the low hum of the engine. Finally, we reached a tall gate guarded by uniformed personnel. After a brief exchange, the van proceeded through, and we continued along what seemed to be a gravel road. I caught glimpses of high fencing and security cameras. Then we arrived at a structure that looked like a hospital from the outside. except there were no signs to indicate its purpose. They led me through a steel door into a bright hallway lined with white tiles. The air smelled faintly of disinfectant. I was asked to hand over my phone, and I complied. "We'll keep this secure for you," said a guard. "You can collect it at the end of the study." Something about the guard's expression told me there was no negotiating. I swallowed nervously and nodded. I was led to a small examination room, where another staff member took my measurements, checked my heart rate, and performed a brief neurological exam. "All normal," she said, scribbling notes on a form. "Your assigned quarters will be ready in an hour. Please wait in room 4B. Room 4B turned out to be a featureless lounge, with only 4 chairs and a small table. 3 other individuals were already there, each looking as uncertain as I felt. We introduced ourselves in hushed voices. Eva, a student who needed money for tuition. Marlon, an artist on the verge of losing his studio. And Linda, a retiree who had chronic insomnia. We chatted for a while, but no one had specific details on the study itself. All we knew was that it involved overnight observation and that we'd be compensated generously. Eventually, a staff member entered with a stack of papers. "These are the protocols," he said. "Read them carefully. Once you sign, you are bound to follow them for your entire stay." The protocol binder, as it was labeled, consisted of several sheets of bullet points. Some were expected, such as not leaving the facility without permission, no disruptions during scheduled sleep hours, and no tampering with equipment. But as I read further, the rules became more unsettling. Rule 1. Wear the provided headgear at all times, even when you are not sleeping. Rule 2. Consume only the meal packets we provide, no outside food or drink. Rule 3. Under no circumstances attempt to communicate with the occupant of room 12. Rule 4. If you hear unusual sounds during the night, do not investigate. Rule 5. All journaling must be done in the provided notebooks. Rule 6. Turning off or tampering with the cameras in your room is strictly prohibited. We exchanged puzzled looks. None of us had known about room 12 or why it was off limits. But the staff member gave no elaboration. He simply told us to sign or leave. I glanced at the others. Everyone was biting their lip, obviously unsure. But the lure of that paycheck was strong. One by one we signed. Afterward, they escorted each of us down a long corridor. My designated space was labeled Room 7. It was a small dorm-like setup featuring a twin bed, a desk, and a closet for my belongings. On the wall was a camera with a tiny green light. It seemed to be on at all times. A strange piece of headgear, resembling a compact helmet with attached sensors, was placed neatly on the desk. Next to it sat a sealed box of meal packets. Pinned to the corkboard was a single note. "Remember to record all dreams in your notebook immediately upon waking. Place the notebook in the designated tray by 9 a.m. daily." The rest of the evening was a blur. We were introduced to the schedule. Lights off at 10 p.m., wake up at 7 a.m., then breakfast in our rooms. Daily check-ins with a staff member at noon. Mandatory sleep sessions from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. They collected the notebooks each morning, replaced them with fresh ones, and occasionally took us for brain scans or basic physical exams. The first couple of days seemed uneventful. I tried on the headgear, which felt strange but not uncomfortable. I mostly read and wrote in my journal. The meals were bland but filling. We had occasional group sessions in the lounge, where a soft-spoken doctor asked about our dream experiences. Eva mentioned that she hadn't dreamed at all. Marlon said he'd had mild nightmares. Linda claimed she didn't remember her dreams. I too recalled only snippets, shadows, a sense of falling, fleeting images I couldn't place. They assured us this was normal and encouraged us to keep logging any sensations. On the 4th night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to a subtle vibration from the device on my head. It felt like a gentle buzz. I tried to drift back to sleep, but the feeling persisted, pulsing in a steady rhythm. Then I heard it. A soft humming sound, like a distant machine. I wondered if it was part of the facility's ventilation system. Eventually, I slipped back into sleep. In the morning, no one else mentioned hearing a humming. The staff took my vital signs as usual and jotted down notes. I tried asking the nurse if there was some sort of equipment running at night, but her non-answers only heightened my curiosity. "All you need to focus on is rest," she said, politely changing the topic. By the end of the first week, tension was growing. Marlon admitted he was having extremely vivid dreams, bizarre scenes of endless corridors and flickering lights as if he were trapped in a looping hallway. He looked tired, with dark circles under his eyes. Meanwhile, Eva grew jumpy and seemed reluctant to speak during the daily sessions. Whenever staff pressed her for details, she'd glance around nervously. One evening I bumped into Linda in the hallway. Her face was pale and she whispered, "I heard footsteps last night right outside my door." But it couldn't have been staff. Our hallway is off limits after curfew. I tried to see who it was, but I remembered the rule not to investigate. This morning I asked around, and no one would admit to anything. She looked at me, trembling. "I don't know if I can handle this." Despite the growing unease, I forced myself to follow the instructions. My curiosity about room 12, however, was becoming harder to ignore. Every corridor had number plates on the doors, but I had yet to spot a door labeled 12. Was it hidden? Or maybe it was in a restricted wing. I started making mental notes of every sign and door I passed. On day 10, a staff member came by earlier than usual. "We need to adjust your headgear," she said. "There's a small malfunction." She fiddled with the sensors, pressed a few buttons, and said it was all set. That night I felt the buzzing again, this time more pronounced. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and as I drifted off, I had the strangest dream. I was in a windowless hallway, the walls pulsating with a faint glow. As I walked, I noticed doors without handles. At the far end was a heavy steel door with a flickering number, 12. When I approached, I heard quiet breathing on the other side, but I couldn't open it. I pressed my ear to the cold metal and heard something, like the shuffle of someone's feet. Then a voice called my name so quietly I almost missed it. I jerked awake, drenched in sweat. In the morning I wrote down every detail in my notebook. I wanted to talk about it in the group session, but a silent fear gnawed at me. The staff might suspect me of trying to investigate something forbidden. Still, during the session, I admitted I'd had a dream about a corridor, but I left out the door labeled 12. The staff seemed pleased that I was making significant progress in recalling my dreams. Their smiles were oddly unsettling. 2 nights later, around midnight, I was awakened by a beeping alarm in the hallway. Rubbing my eyes, I checked the clock on my desk. 12:02 a.m. Confused, I crept to the door and pressed my ear against it. The alarm stopped. Then I heard hurried footsteps and muffled voices. "Containment. We need more sedation." My heart pounded. I wondered if there was some kind of medical emergency. Then a crash echoed through the corridor, followed by a loud metallic clang, then silence. I wanted to open my door, but the rules were strict. Do not investigate unusual sounds. My mind raced, imagining all sorts of scenarios. After several minutes of trembling, I convinced myself it was a simple medical event and everything would be fine by morning. I could barely sleep, though. My headgear kept buzzing at intervals as if it too was reacting to the alarm. The following day, the staff members appeared on edge. They moved down the halls swiftly, and I heard them whispering among themselves. At noon, Dr. Ellis led the group session. He did not explain the previous night's alarm, only telling us to trust the process and remain focused on rest. Marlon seemed particularly tense, his eyes darting around the room. I asked him afterward if he was okay. He just shook his head, avoiding my gaze. When I returned to my room, I found a sealed note on my desk. It was a short message in typed font. "Do not speak of last night. We are watching." I stared at the words, my stomach twisting. Obviously, I was being monitored more closely than I realized. I glanced up at the camera. It seemed like the tiny green light was piercing right through me. On day 15, I woke from an afternoon nap to find 2 staff members in my room, whispering anxiously. When they realized I was awake, they muttered, "Wrong room," and rushed out. I glimpsed someone being wheeled past on a gurney, limbs secured and headgear bristling with extra wires. The individual's wide, unblinking eyes gave me chills. That same night, my door's lock beeped after midnight. The headgear buzzed so intensely that my thoughts blurred. Desperate for answers, I slipped into the corridor. Treading carefully past the dorm rooms, I discovered a heavy steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." I nearly grabbed the handle, but a scraping noise made me hide. A staff member led a figure wearing a modified headgear into another hallway through a door labeled 12 in peeling paint. My heart pounded. Room 12. The occupant we were forbidden to contact. I was about to follow when a security guard appeared behind me, ordering me back to my room. Early the next morning, Dr. Ellis confronted me with security footage. He threatened to end my participation if I broke the rules again. The dread of losing payment and facing potential trouble kept me silent. The final days were tense. Everyone looked haunted, and no one would speak freely. On day 19, we received a note announcing the last phase. Total isolation for 48 hours, with meals pushed through a slot. That night I drifted into a haze as my headgear's vibrations lulled me into a heavy sleep. Strange visions haunted me, corridors stretching into darkness, chanting voices, and the figure at the threshold of room 12 whispering my name. Time lost meaning. My clock blinked erratically, and the lights stayed dim. My mind wavered between dream and reality. By day 21, a staff member arrived to remove my headgear, saying only, "The study is over." When I reached the lobby, Eva, Linda, and Marlon were already waiting, all appearing disoriented. The silent drive back ended at the same lot where we'd been picked up. Each of us was handed a sealed envelope with our payment, along with an order never to discuss the study. I returned home feeling changed. My phone showed no activity for the entire time I'd been away, as though I'd vanished from the world. Now, even weeks later, my nights are plagued by memories of that steel door, the occupant's lifeless stare, and the unrelenting hum that still echoes in my mind. Sometimes I stare at the nonsensical scribbles I left in my final notebook, wondering if they hold a clue. I'm too uneasy to reach out to the others, or to risk drawing the Institute's attention. All I know is that I once believed this sleep study would be a harmless way to make money. Instead, it left me with a lingering sense of dread, a feeling that somewhere deep in the walls of that place, room 12, and whatever lurked inside, has followed me home. Thanks for watching. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button and subscribe for more eerie creepypastas. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.